Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I'm here for another Monday This and That video, which is where I give you updates on various things. This time of year is letting you know how the garden's going, letting you know of different projects I have going on, maybe leading you back some old videos or answering questions that have come in the past week. And it is a way I can keep you more current, since the rest of the videos you'll see on my channel at this point are now 6 weeks ahead from the time that they were shot until the time they published. So I literally have 6 weeks worth of videos just waiting to publish. So 5 videos a week, and then Mondays are the one day of the week that I can at least stay more current, since I shoot these on the Thursday just before they publish on Monday. So let's start off with these lilac infusions. So if you're subscribed to and you get notifications, you may have seen the community post I made this last week where I started an infusion with lilacs using honey and homemade wine. Now, there's a lot of honey in this, and this is what it looks like now. You can see it's a lot more gold. Let me shake it up so you can see it better. And I only started this yesterday, so it hasn't even been going for a full 24 hours. And you can see when I first started it, it looked very white. And part of that is because I used a raw cream honey, where it's, you know, it's just a lot more pale in color anyway. And I ran it through the blender to mix in with the homemade wine. So it would have been full of a whole bunch of little teeny tiny bubbles, giving it even more of that white appearance. And plus you've got the wine is golden color anyway, and the color of the lilacs has already started to infuse into the liquid. Now I'm going to start 2 more infusions, and I'm going to do each one a little bit different. So in this case, I'm only doing half pint jars instead of a whole pint. I tasted this morning, and while I can already taste some of the lilac in there, the honey is a little too overpowering. So I'm going to do 2 samples, doing one with spiced rum and the other one with homemade wine. And then after a couple of weeks, and I'll keep checking them. Usually you let your extracts sit for 6 to 8 weeks. But in this case, I think it may not need to sit near as long, maybe 3 weeks. But I'll keep checking it, and I want to taste the difference between the 2 and then see if I like it without the honey at all. Sometimes I like to add honey to the extracts, but I really wasn't sure the direction I was wanting to go with this. So I was thinking of a lilac infused honey, but honey is so viscous that it can be hard to extract without adding some extra liquid to it, which is why I added the homemade wine to reduce the viscosity, to make it easier to pour over the lilacs. So, and I'm sorry I didn't get any photos or video clips of that particular process, but I'll be showing you today what I'm doing here. So you can see I've already got my little half pint jars pretty well filled up with lilac flowers, but because I really want as much flavor as I can, I'm going to go ahead and pack some more in there. And so you can see I'm not too worried about some of the stems. I'm just getting most of, especially the bigger stems, making sure those don't end up in there. And then just packing this in nice and tight. So you can see what I'm doing here. Packing that in super tight. I want really strong flavor. Now, obviously, the more material you have in here, the less liquid you're going to be adding, thus the less liquid you're going to be getting out of it. So that looks pretty good. I want to leave a few more for dehydrating and whatever else I want to do. And right here, by the way, are the lilacs I've dehydrated so far. I have a couple more trays on my dehydrator right now, and I still have a few more left on my bush. And my lilac bush is still pretty young, but this is the most lilacs I've gotten off it so far. Anyway, and then, so for one, I shall pour the homemade wine. This is made from my own grapes. And it might be that once I try them all separately, I might mix all 3 of them together at the end of the process. And we'll just see how that turns out. But I want to first try them separately to see how they taste by themselves. Now, the only reason I even keep spiced rum on hand, and I've used Captain Morgan's, but the Kirkland brand is just as good, and it's a little cheaper. At least I think it's just as good. The only reason I keep it on hand is for flavored extracts. And such as the perpetual vanilla extract I always have going. So whenever I take some out of here, I add some more spiced rum, maybe a little bit of honey for sweetness and to help break up the alcohol a little bit. But So far, I only really use it for the vanilla because it's my favorite when it comes to making vanilla extract. It has the best flavor all the way around. Much, much better than vodka. Though it's more expensive, the taste is far better than using vodka. And I don't prefer using vodka for extracts anyway. My homemade wine is one that I use most frequently. So you can see the difference in color, spiced rum, homemade wine. I'll check them through the week and I'll let you know on next Monday's video how these are turning out so far so I can have the comparison. And then as time goes along and I let them to continue extracting, then obviously when it's all done, I'll give you another update on that. Apparently I don't have any more smaller lavender colored lids. So I'll use a green, a bright green, and a bright pink. Now the other infusion I've been doing is a cold infusion with the lilac, like I said I was going to do last week. And it does have just a beautiful flavor to it. And I find leaving it a couple of days is best to really get more of that lilac flavor. And then what I tried with the first batch was after I drank all the water out of there, then I added more water back in and let it sit for a couple more days. And though it doesn't have as much of the flavor as it obviously did the first time, it still has some flavor to it. So I'm trying to get the most out of those lilac flowers as I can. Now to me, that's going to be just a special treat doing that because I feel like it uses a lot of lilac. But as my lilac bush gets bigger and I'm able to get more flowers, I'll probably feel more comfortable doing more of that as the years go by. And by the way, I did do a video last year, I think it was, on the benefits of lilac and the uses. And I also gathered some photos from around the internet where people use lilacs for desserts, like adding to donuts and cakes and cookies and more, plus the medicinal benefits that you can get from lilacs, not just the flowers, but the leaves as well. So I'll link to that video in the description box down below. So don't forget to click on either more or show more somewhere down here. Just below the video screen, you'll see a little box that will have those words in there. Click on whichever one shows it for you, and you'll be able to find all the links in there. And then the dehydrated lilacs I can use for adding to teas or making some oil infusions, you know, adding to my other herbs that I put in my oil infusions for making skin cream and salves because it's excellent for your skin. So moving on from there, I wanted to talk about harvesting herbs. Now, obviously, I'm at that time of the year, whoops, there goes a chunk of golden oregano, where I'm harvesting herbs every day and putting them up. I'm typically dehydrating a bunch. Some of them I'm using fresh, making teas every single day. I'm either making a cold infusion or a hot tea out of it. But I did have a question on how do you harvest herbs? Well, it really depends on how they're growing. So I only just started harvesting for this year my golden oregano this morning, and so there's a ton out there. And you can see it's not all the same color, and that's all depending on the part that gets the most sun. So the leaves that are on the top get the goldest. So the more sun they get, the golder they turn. And so towards the bottom, as you'll see in this clip as I'm cutting the oregano, the leaves towards the bottom are much darker and green. They're still a light green, a lime green, but they're definitely much darker than the ones that you'll see on the top. So golden oregano is one of my favorites. The aroma is wonderful. The taste is wonderful. This is one, it's not hot like your Mediterranean or Greek oreganos, but you can add these to salad because it has this beautiful but mild flavor to it. And so adding it fresh to salads is excellent. And then I dehydrate up a bunch to use in various dishes throughout the year. Because of its more mild flavor, it goes well in just about any type of meal that you're making, whereas your hotter oreganos, the flavor's a lot more strong, more pungent, they're better in certain dishes than others. But this definitely has a more wider variety of uses. So anyways, you saw in the video clip, I basically just take scissors and cut it like I'm doing a haircut. And so on herbs like that and on the thyme. So I cut some more thyme. I still have tons more out there. And you can see in this little clip, it's just like giving it a haircut. Just chop, 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 chop. Now that's those kind of herbs. I'll do the same thing with lemon balm, peppermint, any herb that's growing, catmint, any of the herbs that are growing tight together and they're just in clusters. I just mow it right down. And don't worry, it's going to grow right back. Just like that golden oregano. You see that big chunk that I took out? And it's green on the bottom and it doesn't look so pretty now, but it won't take long before those leaves that was quickly, because anything in the mint family would just boom, boom, it just springs right back. It gives you a lot more. And then the golden oregano, with the sun exposure, will turn gold again like that. But now when it comes to something like, I've been collecting blackberry leaves a little at a time each day, trying not to over harvest, but wanting to get these leaves. And I'm going to start doing, now that we got some raspberry that finally came up on its own, I'm going to start collecting leaves off that. You want to start collecting them before it starts to flower, as far as getting the most benefits. But you don't want to over harvest, because the leaves are necessary to feed the plant. It collects the sun, it collects the moisture, and feeds the plant that way, and so that more energy can go into making the flowers. But once your berry plants or anything that's, you know, producing a fruit like that, or any herb really, before it starts to go to seed, it's always best to keep harvesting it, because once they start to flower, then all the energy, most of the energy, goes into actually making the fruit, seeds, and flowers. So you're not getting as much benefits from the leaves, and you're not getting as many leaves. So for anything you just want leaves from, just keep chopping everything back. But because I do want blackberries and I do want raspberries, I don't want to over harvest the leaves, so I'm picking little bits at a time here and there and sparsely throughout the plants, rather than just hacking a whole bunch down. Unless I'm needing to prune it back, then I'll take all those leaves. So anyway, that's what you see going on here. So let's talk about the beetroot powder I talked about last week. So I'm getting the Anthony's Organic beetroot powder, and I'm loving this stuff. And here's what it looks like. So last week when I showed it, I just showed it the package, but this is what it looks like. I decided to get it out of the package and put it in a jar so I could seal it up better. And it's just such a beautiful color. And I've been mixing it with lemonade just to kind of get more of those benefits. And one of the thoughts I had, and I mentioned last week, was to ferment some. So it does blend easier if you can just make a bunch at a time, put it in the blender, because sometimes I still end up with clumps of the beetroot powder if I just use a fork to try to mix it in. But anyway, mix it with lemonade just because it's good. Organic lemonade I get from Costco, and right now I'm fermenting this. So it's not bubbly at all yet. It might have a tiny bit of fizz if I shake it, but that's because I only just started it maybe 12 hours ago. So yesterday afternoon, I only just got it started. I should be able to see bubbles on it by tomorrow morning. It usually takes 3 days to make a good fermented soda type drink when you're fermenting it. So I didn't add any sugar because the lemonade already had sugar in it, so there was no need to add sugar to this. I just mixed the powder. I put in about 2 tablespoons total of the powder. So that's why this is so dark, is I added a little bit more of the powder into the lemonade, put it in the blender, and then blended it real good so I wouldn't have any clumps of the powder. And then I also had my fermentation starter in here, and which is the raisin. It's still sitting out because I always, after I use it, I feed it, add more water, and then leave it out for a day. And so this is or at least 12 hours. So it's good enough now. I'm going to be putting this back in the fridge here in a minute. If you'd like more information on how to make a fermentation starter and how to use it, I'll link to that video, like I'm always doing, in the description box down below. My most thorough video. It's the longest one on the fermentation starter because it's the most thorough. The last thing I want to talk about has to do with the video that came out this last week on vitamin D deficiency or toxicity, and I read off some of the symptoms. But as always happens with such videos, is people, instead of taking time to listen to everything I say in there and all the points I'm trying to cover, they get a little bent out of shape and they don't hear the message. So the point in that video, if you haven't seen it yet, or if you have seen it, or you only watched a part of it and didn't watch the whole thing, my point was not that nobody should ever take vitamin D supplements like some people wrongly heard. That is not at all what I said. In fact, I said the opposite. I said, I understand some people do need to supplement with vitamin D, and I've been doing it for years. But I shared my own story on the issues I had with the supplementation for the first time ever. I'm not going to go into the whole story here because I already covered it in that video. But some people will need to do it, but not everybody. So it seems like we get on this tangent that, you know, because this doctor over here shared this, and this doctor shared that, and this person shared that. Oh, everybody needs to supplement with vitamin D3, when that's not true. Some people, yes, need to do it. I'd never negated that fact. but not everyone does. In fact, if you read through the comments, some people shared their own stories. Some people shared stories about how going on taking vitamin D supplements really helped them with this or that or whatever health issue it was, while other people had similar reactions to me and realized they were getting too much vitamin D. So it is possible to get too much vitamin D. And yes, while I believe that Big Pharma does try to keep us away from doing things that are healthy for us, you have to also remember that supplement companies also have to protect their bottom line. Just like Big Pharma that's going to convince everybody that they need to inject this into their body or take this drug or that drug, your supplement companies are going to do the same and try to convince you you need to take this supplement. And again, I do take supplements as is necessary, but I also listen to my body. And no, I'm not going to run to the doctor and get a bunch of tests done. I'm not even going to order up at-home tests. I don't see that necessary when I think you're going to be far more attuned to what you need if you just listen to your body. So when I started having these different side effects and I was trying to narrow it down to what it was, and I was eliminating things one by one until I finally got down to the last thing I'd started doing somewhat differently was the vitamin D and upping the amount. Once I quit taking it altogether, things started to clear up and get better. So because I'm paying attention and then doing my research and see what that does also, instead of relying on a doctor or some test that I can order through the mail, not only am I better learning how to listen to my body and pay attention to symptoms and learn what to and trying to figure out where the root of the problem is and getting familiar with that, I'm actually expanding my knowledge in the process, because as I do the research, I find, oh gosh, I learned this and a little bit more. And no, I do not get my information from a Big Pharma site. Now, I will use the NIH to back up with the studies that they have to back up what I find through natural sources, be it Healthline, Dr. Axe, and more, lots more. So I compare information from a bunch of different sites, medical resources and government resources and natural resources. And I cross compare everything. And I was coming up consistently with the same information no matter where I went. I do believe Big Pharma is trying to prevent us from being healthy because they have stand a lot of money to make from us, but they're more doing that less through the supplement, scaring you away from supplementation, as they are from scaring you away from the natural foods. So let's come back to the selenium. Selenium can be toxic if you're taking it by itself as a supplement in high doses. But eating Brazil nuts is not going to kill you. And that's what they're trying to scare people away from, is actually eating Brazil nuts. So you're getting all the nutrients in their whole food form. And it's going to be a lot healthier for you. Same thing goes with vitamin D3. I don't think anyone's going to overdo it on vitamin D3 by getting out in the sun and eating a good healthy diet that's rich in vitamin D3. If they're doing that, I highly doubt they're ever going to have high toxic levels of vitamin D3. And another thing was the K2. People start going on about the K2 without even listening to the whole video. I covered K2. The same foods that are rich in vitamin D3 are also rich in vitamin K2. And come to find out that K2 isn't as effective in a supplement form as it is getting it from the food. And yes, I understand that soils are depleted, and so we're not going to get as many nutrients from our food. However, if we're growing a lot of our own food, or at least getting it from the most natural sources that we can, not ones that are genetically modified, not ones that spray a bunch of toxic chemicals on their plants, but ones that are grown more organically and they enrich their soil the more natural and organic way, then I do believe we can still get a good amount of nutrients, necessary nutrients, from our food. So there's a lot of inexpensive natural ways that you can really feed your soil when you're growing your own garden. That doesn't require spraying a bunch of pesticides and chemical fertilizers. Just look at grass clipping, or like our most recent thing was we managed to get a whole bunch of mulch from trees that had been taken down because somebody needed to clear their property. So a whole bunch of trees. So we got a 15-yard dump truck full of mulch to put on our gardens. And that's been great. My plants already just look so much better this year than they did last year simply by doing that. Listen to your own body. Pay attention to your symptoms. If you're possibly taking too much of something, you can cut it out and see if that stops the symptoms. That way you'll know if you're getting too much. No need to run to the doctor and have a bunch of expensive tests done. Just listen to your body, number one. Number two is that not everything that is recommended for most people is for everyone, because we're all individual, we're all going to have different needs. Those were the two main points of that video, was to just get people to start thinking for themselves. That's all. So if you have to take vitamin D3, if it is healing you up and making you feel better, do it. If it's not making you feel better and you're having symptoms, then maybe you need to rethink it. That's all it is. Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. And by the way, that applies to any supplementation, anything that you're taking on top. And really to try to just look at your food and look at ways that you can get more of those nutrients within your food. And if you still need to supplement, then do what you need to do. That is best for you. Okay. And like that guy that came in and said, everybody needs to do this, that. No, not everybody. Okay. I'm not going to do some blanket statement that everybody needs to stop taking supplements or everybody needs to take supplements. It's all going to be individual. All right. Well, there's my rant for the day. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my this and that video for the week, and any thoughts, ideas, questions, please put them in the comments down below and I'll try to get back to you or even cover it in a future video. Thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.